Frolo is the app that several thousand single parents say has been life-changing for them in the most profound way. If you're a single parent and want to connect with other single parents and open yourself up to an amazing support network and new experiences, then the Frolo app is the one for you. The Frolo app has two modes: community mode for meetups and holidays, guidance and support, chats, and discovery to make it easy to find like-minded local single parents near you. Dating mode is a mindful, safe, and respectful dating offering where everybody is there to date another single parent. All users on Frolo are verified, putting our user safety first always. The Frolo app is free to download and use, with the option to upgrade to premium for access to lots of additional premium features for an elevated experience, which makes it easier than ever to access the incredible connections and experiences you are looking for. To download Frolo, search for Frolo, Frolo, on the App or Google Play Store, or go to www.frolo.com for more info. We can't wait to see you on the app soon. Hi, I'm Zoe Desmond, the founder of Frolo, the award-winning app for single parents that features both community and dating modes. And I'm also co-author, along with my wonderful friend Rebecca Cox, that I made through Frolo, of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Frolo podcast. Today I am so excited to be joined by the lovely Susannah and Karl. It's the first time that I've ever had Frolo community members on the Frolo podcast. So, and Susannah and Karl have been part of the Frolo community for quite some time now, for a few years, I think. So really, really looking forward to having this chat. Welcome, Susannah and Karl.
Hi, Zoe. Thanks for having us.
Hey, thank you.
So looking forward to, so looking forward to this. So I guess, right, well, the place to start really, and just to inform our listeners, Susannah and Karl are both single parents who came to the Frolo community, which I'm really interested to find out how you found out about Frolo and what your single parent backgrounds are. But another interesting aspect to why I have you both on at the same time is that you found love through Frolo. And really looking forward to, getting into a conversation about how your journeys took shape. So maybe if we start with you, Susannah, I'd love to ask you about your single parent story. Like, when did you become a single parent? How did you become a single parent?
Okay, so I became a single parent 8 years ago, and devastated currently at the time. So I was married with 2 children, and then my husband just left and had an affair with my friend. So that was very tricky in all aspects, and it totally kind of blew my world upside down. And as you know, Zoe, if it wasn't for Frolo, for many a reason, but it really helped me on probably one of the most devastating things that had happened in my life, if I'm honest.
Wow. Yeah, that is, so much. And I'm sure lots of people listening will identify with a similar situation of becoming a single parent as well. And so how did you go about things at that time? Obviously a huge emotional time, I'm sure, for you, navigating the end of the relationship, dealing with, an affair, like trying to be a mother, like so many different things going on to contend with. So how did you go about it all?
At the very beginning, I don't think I did a very good job in anything. I think that my emotions were ridiculously high, to think that my marriage had failed after a very long time, and I felt that everything was fine in that marriage and good at most of it. So then to be able to try and look after my upset and my grief, and then be a mother while my 2 children were blown out of the water and devastated, but that was just so hard. I think I hid in the shower, cried most of the time, screamed and shouted the rest of the time. and then just try to be there as a supportive mother for my children. But I found it really hard because none of my friends were single parents. So for my friends who were parents, they were still very happily married. So although they were fantastic, they never really understood the loneliness and the hardness of then having to do everything 24 hours a day constantly. So that's when then I thought, I need to find somebody to help me because I don't know what to do. I just didn't know what to do. And then I Googled just single parents and what to reach for and how I could cope with it, in all honesty. And then Frolo came up. And then I just joined, and as you very well know, I've been an original Frolo member ever since, and it literally was life-changing at the very beginning to help me understand that I wasn't the only single person in the world and that I wasn't the only single parent and mother. And all my feelings were totally validated because so many people felt that way. But I also, what I loved about the Frolo community and still do, is that I was really able to reach out to dads because I didn't know how best to deal with my ex-husband and some of those trickier situations with the children and co-parenting. I just felt that, am I the one being unfair? So then I'd reach out to all the men in the Frolo community saying, is this fair or not? And they'd be like, Susannah, you're totally being fair. Geez, I wish my ex-wife was that fair. And I'm like, really? Great.
That's amazing. You know what? I've never heard of that as a kind of as a perspective before in what Frolo's been helpful, but it makes so much sense, and I'm so glad that you had, because I think a lot of people, when we're in that kind of in the thick of that situation, and it can be a very raw and emotional situation, just trying to deal with the whole separation or co-parenting or navigating conflict that might come up in it. But for you to have that awareness and that emotional intelligence and to be able to use Frolo as a resource to actually check in and sanity check with the Frolo dads, is this, am I being unreasonable? I think that's amazing. I think that's really, really, really amazing.
And do you know what, though, Zoe? It really, really helped me because it was a situation that I didn't know of. I mean, my parents had split up, but everything was all right there, really, if you know what I mean. I don't really have too many negative memories in the sense, but I really didn't know what to do, like in anything, like financially, where you go for support, for help, for conversation, for what other people have done. So as you know, like now, 8 years down the line, where my life is so very different in so many ways to do with Frolo, and thanks to Karl too. But it's so very different. But the beginning and the awfulness of my journey allowed that friendships with the dad for myself to find Karl type of thing. So it's so very different now. So now I just see it all in a slightly different light, that it was meant to be that way, but Frolo was my reaching point on everything. It truly was.
That's amazing. And I really so ridiculously strongly identify with what you're saying, that feeling of it just being, when I look back at my beginning of being a single parent, it just felt so bleak because I didn't know any other single parents like you. I didn't have access to any information, any support, didn't feel comfortable kind of being a single parent. There was just so much. And it really upsets me to think of anyone being in that space, even to hear you talking about the fact that you were in it. And so much to get into. But Karl, I'd love to move to you and ask about your single parent story, and how did you become a single parent, and when was that?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different from Susannah's story. It's probably about the same sort of timeline though. About 7 or 8 years ago, I decided to walk away from my marriage to be honest, it hadn't been good for a very long period of time. And probably a bit like Susannah was just talking about, really, there's that kind of almost fear aspect of, obviously, of course, you want to try everything before you make that ultimate decision to leave. And that's very much the case of what I did. I tried to do everything physically I could do with the two children we had in our marriage as well. And it just didn't work. And it doesn't work, unfortunately, if two people don't put the same amount of effort into a relationship. And once I walked away, though, I probably made a bad decision in the sense that I went very quickly into another relationship because I wasn't used to being alone. I'd been with my ex-wife for 15, 16 years, and I just wasn't quite sure where I was. I was a bit all over the place. And obviously, when you go through a relationship breakup, whether it's in the way that Susannah, yourself, or myself have gone through those, there is a trauma aspect to it, and that was, unfortunately, my trauma response was to seek solace in somebody else afterwards who didn't have children, who hadn't ever really been around children. And I ended up in a relationship with them for a couple of years, and it only took me that kind of, unfortunately, took me that kind of long. And they were never bad with the children; they were very good with the children, but they just didn't get the fact that actually the children come first, and they need to be the priority in your life, and that should always be the case. And that's the wonderful thing that then, after that relationship ended, kind of led me to Frolo, really, which was that I joined a single parent group on Facebook, and then I think within the conversations I had there, somebody said, "Oh, you should join Frolo." So I was like, "What's Frolo?" And obviously you go away and do your research, and then I found the community there. And what was so incredibly wonderful about it was, as you say, it's got so many different people from so many different scenarios. There's pretty much like one of everybody. We've all had different experiences, but in that we've also had then the same experience, which is you've gone through that break, you've gone through that trauma, you've gone through something that, when everybody gets married or joins into that partnership of having a child together, you don't imagine that's the end goal, because of course that's not why you do it. So everybody has that similar thing in common, which brings people together. And it was really lovely for me to join it as a man as well, because everybody knows us men aren't great at talking. And certainly not about our emotions and feelings all the time. And actually having dads groups within there and having, I've always been better communicating with women than I have with men, unfortunately, because, as you say, to share emotions and feelings is not always something that's done. It's a lot better now than it ever used to be. But within Frolo, it was a lot better as well. And for me, that's one of the things I very much loved within that it didn't matter whether it was another dad or another mom, that there was always somebody there to speak to talk to, always a meet up to get involved in, a coffee morning or something like that, where you could reach out and go, how would you solve this problem? My ex is doing this, or my kids are doing this. How do I solve this problem, people? And there's always somebody there to answer it.
Yeah, and I'm so glad. It's so nice to get your perspective as a Frolo dad, who's used the app, because so many people jump to the assumption, oh, all single parents are single moms, or the dads don't want to be involved, or even when I have been talking to people about what I do, and I've got an app called Frolo, and it's for single parents, and straight away people go, oh, that's great that you've got an app for single moms. And I said, no, it's for single parents. It's for single moms and single dad, and that's always been really, really important to kind of shatter some of these negative, outdated stereotypes, messages, because it's really not in any way helpful. And the more, that we can, be inclusive to all types of single parents and moms and dads, the better for everybody, the better we can all show up for our kids, the better for our kids. And yeah, so I love how engaged and active the Frollo dads are in the community. It's really, it's amazing. I think it's brilliant. And it makes the community a better place, having all of these different perspectives and inputs and being able to balance things out as well. I think it's really, really, really good. So I'm really glad to hear that that's been your experience. So then getting on to you guys and your romance. So obviously we Frolo Community launched in 2019, and then the dating side of Frolo, followed on, years after. We launched that back in 2022. So I know that you guys met through the community, but it was organic. You became friends first. So yeah, really interested to hear your story. And I've never quite heard exactly how it happened. So yeah, Susannah, do you want to start?
I will. So Karl had put a post up on the main feed of the Frolo community saying that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Karl, that he'd gone on a date. And the date had gone all right the night before. It was okay. But then the woman said that he was too nice. And why was he too nice? So she didn't want to have another date with him, see him again or anything, because she felt that he was too nice. She was going through a few things herself, but ultimately that was that. And then where I just kind of interact with the community all the time anyway, I just sent back saying, well, she's definitely not for you then, because nobody is too nice. And then, Karl, you can take over from the rest of that.
But yeah, I mean, as you already know, Zoe, like Susannah is a massive part of the Frolo community and was always incredibly welcoming. So even before these dates, really, I think Susannah had sent me a message saying hello and welcome to the community. And if you need help or support, this is where you can find this and this is where you can find the other. And
I love it. This is Susannah. But this is so.
Oh, she's a legend.
Susannah.
Let's be honest. Let's be honest. She's a legend.
No, Zoe is the legend for creating Frolo, and then it has brought me so much help and joy that I love to give back. That's what it is.
Okay, well, but yes. So Susannah, and as I say, like I'd had this date, and in fairness, it was another single parent. Not that I'd met through the app or anything like that, because it was a community app. That isn't the purpose of the app before you obviously created the dating side of it. But I'd met them through some other I think it was one of the hideous dating apps that is out there. And I met up, and as I say, I had a good enough date, but as I say, like too keen, too nice, apparently, asking somebody the day after a date whether or not they would like to go on a second date apparently is not a done thing nowadays.
What?
But as you say, whether it be karma or just pure luck, no, not really me either.
No, I don't understand it either. So
I'm reading it as code for something. But yes, so thankfully I posted in the group and I just said, is this normal? Has anybody else had this? And Susannah very kindly reached out to me, and you know what? It was just incredibly natural, because I am, as Susannah will tell you, I can waffle, I can talk quite a lot. But when I get involved in conversation, I just can rattle on. So we swapped a couple of messages, and she was just very friendly and very welcoming. And then I just kind of, I think whether it is probably myself, I'm not going to lie. I kind of reached out probably kind of every day just to say hi and, thanks very much for your support the next day. And then that kind of led into more conversation, which then it kind of just naturally flowed from there, really. And I suppose the thing that was a surprise for me was I found out that this not only incredibly wonderful, nice person, but ridiculously beautiful. Sorry, I am cheesy as well. Susannah loves it. Not. But how in this time that I think it had been a good 4 years since Susannah had been single, had she not been on any dates herself? And of course that ended up cropping up in conversation, and we got on so well. And because Susannah has 2 children and I have 2 children, and our eldest daughters are only 2 months apart in age, sort of thing, we had a lot in common with regards to that. And where what Susannah mentioned before about bouncing ideas about, how do I deal with this with my ex-husband and how do you deal with this with your ex-wife? We were obviously able to get that kind of collaborative kind of conversation going, really. And it just, as I say, it flowed. We ended up finding out we were talking through the app. Obviously, you don't swap phone numbers, really, and we did that to the point where it was kind of probably a good month in. And then we were like, you know what, this is really nice. We're talking every day. Maybe we should can I have your phone number, please? Bearing in mind I'd already been told I was too nice for asking for a second date from somebody else. So I was a bit wary about doing it because that's not obviously what Frolo was about, and I didn't want to get myself in trouble. But I took a chance, and I'm forever grateful I did. And yeah, it kind of just led from there, really. Ridiculously long phone calls and stuff like that.
Amazing. And it's so lovely of, how it all kind of formed and, well, both being single parents and kind of supporting each other, on the app and through your own single parent situations. And I guess building up a friendship and a bit of a rapport and a bit of trust by the sounds of things, by like checking in with each other daily. So how was the first meeting? What was that like?
Go on, darling. I'll leave you with that one.
So it was really tricky. So I had been single for 4 years since my ex-husband left, and I just did not want to date at all. So what was really very organically lovely for me is that I felt so safe within the Frolo community of friendships with other dads and lots of dads, and I've got some great friends and still do now. Is that then I felt comfortable that I could then open up a little bit more in the sense of conversation, and then asking quite hard-hitting questions about certain things to do with my ex-husband and situations. And that then, by the time then obviously Karl joined Frolo and we became friends, I felt a bit more confident in the sense that I was able to say certain things to other males and they wouldn't take it that I fancied them or I wanted to go on a date with them or anything like that. It was just great, solid friendship of people, like you say, just getting it and understanding it. But then when Karl sent me a message, I remember messaging my best friend saying, oh my God, he wants to have my number now and he's thinking about taking me on a date. I just don't know I can do that. I was too scared. I was like, I haven't dated for like nearly 20 years. There's just no way. I'm too old and stupid and I just don't want to do that. And I was really scared. And then it was all there. Oh, I was like Karl. I tell Karl all the time. And it was just a really scary thing for me to let somebody else in after I'd just gone through all these years of then acceptance and understanding and growing as a single parent and a mum in a different way, that I was just quite contently happy with that. I just didn't feel that I wanted a relationship. And then my best friend said, if you don't go, I'll go for you. So I said, okay, I'll go.
Well, just before you continue, I was just going to jump in and say that I completely identify with that as well, as I'm sure so many other single parents do, because when you become a single parent, whatever your circumstances that led you there are, but I think, especially if it's through a relationship breakdown and you're kind of picking up your pieces and, dealing with whatever trauma has happened. And, it's a lot to pick up all those pieces. It's a lot to get back on your feet. It's a lot to kind of, build up, find that resilience in you to put one foot in front of the other and manage. So I think once you do, you're so like proud of yourself for getting there, but also so protective of getting yourself to that place. And probably a lot of single parents, I think, do feel quite guarded of their heart then and their little world and their little unit and their sanctuary that they've built, like, kind of back up.
Yeah, because you do, don't you?
Completely. So I completely get that, and I think there's probably a bit of a resistance with kind of really opening that door to letting a new relationship in for single parents for that very reason, I would say. So yeah, sorry, just wanted to validate that.
And then because children are involved, you just think, geez, just what we've all gone through. oh, I just don't, like, the children are calmer now. They're settled. They seem better. They've accepted it. They've sort of moved on a little bit. I didn't want to shift that or alter that very much. But I think that for me, I didn't want to then, this sounds really awful, but it's the total truth. I didn't want to get all really ridiculously dressed up. I didn't want to go to like a restaurant. I didn't want to go anywhere far. I just wanted to then meet in person, sort of short and quickly. It didn't end that way, but I just wanted it short, quickly, just to see each other in person, to see if there was more of like that physical connection, and all of that kind of stuff. So we literally, bless Karl, because as you know, we live miles away from each other. He drove like nearly 75% of the way because I had to make sure that I dropped the children off at school to then be back to pick them up in plenty of time, because that was another panic for me. And I didn't want to tell my family, other than my best friends, that I was kind of meeting a guy and going on a date. But I wasn't calling it a date. We were just catching up. And I just didn't want to kind of let my family know that, because I was so scared. It's not a date. We're just going to catch up. That's all. We just talk. That's all we're going to do, if you know what I mean. And so we literally drove down and we met at a services and had coffee.
So when you saw each other in person, you know, what was the feeling?
I did think, thank goodness he looks like, I thought, thank goodness he looks exactly like his photo.
Yeah.
He looks like he looked on FaceTime.
Yeah.
I thought, he's not a catfish. He's not anything dodgy. I was like, oh, okay. I felt okay. I was really nervous though. I was nearly sick in my stomach. It was just, I felt about like, you know, really young again and just bizarre. It was just a very bizarre situation. And then as soon as after I saw that and then realised, oh, he's actually quite a handsome chap here, then we just started talking, and then it was like we couldn't stop talking and just laughing and then just talking about all the things that we had before. So then we were just very relaxed and it was really lovely. And I was nearly late for picking up the children.
Always a good sign. If you're on a date and you lose track of time, that is a good sign. How about you, Karl? What was your experience?
Yeah, well, I think the important thing, and it's definitely something for any single parents out there considering dating, and obviously other single parents are a wonderful way to go with that. But what we had was this wonderful compromise and understanding of each other's scenario. So because Susannah hadn't dated for a while, and although I'd had those couple of terrible dates, I hadn't dated really either myself. And it was, obviously, I have my children every other weekend, so I didn't have that weekday scenario and routine to work with. So it was about understanding, okay, well, Susannah's nervous, great. Let's make it as comfortable as possible for her to be able to escape if she needs to. You know, like, I'm a nice guy. I know I'm a nice guy. Apparently it gets me in trouble being a nice guy, but I'm a nice guy. So it's that bit's not a problem. You know, she doesn't have to worry, but let's go, because we were 2 hours apart from each other. So it was a case of, well, I'll travel an hour and a half to see you, you know, and you know, you're half an hour away. That way, if the kids are ill or you need to pick them up in an emergency, you're not far away. You can go, you can escape, and that's fine. Even if that was a fake excuse and she just did it to escape, that was fine as well. But that's the thing. But as Susannah said, as soon as we got together, as soon as we met in person, there was that instant kind of chemistry. It really is cheesy, and I don't mind saying it because this young lady I will spend the rest of my life with. I'm extremely confident about that. But there was this twinkle when I looked at her in the eye, and she has this sort of winning smile that just says, "Oh yeah, okay, yeah, fabulous." So yeah, and I don't want to go too much. Don't want to go too much.
I love it.
But yeah, it was great, and as kind of in the same way with our friendship, kind of everything just naturally kind of flowed from there, because this was still, I think, kind of when things had changed with COVID and restrictions and everything, so we were able to meet, but you still were restricted on the amount of people you could meet. So then it was a conscious effort of, if we were going to continue to see each other, then we kind of had to make each other part of our bubbles as such. So I think we worked out, obviously all within the regulations and rules and everything else, to make sure that was the case. And that kind of almost showed commitment quite early on, really, that you were willing to be that other person's person.
Absolutely. And I think, it's, I think something that is so amazing about, kind of connecting with other single parents, whether it's just, from a community and friendship perspective, but also dating, is that kind of immediate like understanding of the worlds that you're both coming from, on what prioritizing the kids on certain, challenges there are, the highs and lows of single parent life. I think it really does open up the space and opportunity for a much deeper connection, and also it cuts out the need for all of that small talk at the beginning, because there's a much, you've got that shared, you've got such a specific shared experience to connect over.
And I think so as well. And I think that what really helped me, like, I'm going to be cheesy now, Karl, is to fall in love with Karl is because we had communicated so well together. And because I didn't initially thought that then it was going to be a relationship or anything like that, I was very brutally honest and chatted about everything, really. And I think that is so vital as a single parent, because I think that possibly then for me in my marriage, I was one way. And then after I'd come through such an awful separation and divorce, that then I was like, I'm just not going to put up with certain things. I'm not going to have that for my children, for myself. And I think that then within the Frolo community just helps to reaffirm that. So that I felt that because Karl really understood, like for me, I was like constantly fight for my children and they will always 100% come first, like Karl and his children, that was a real good kind of common ground to be on. So then as we started our relationship, if there was something that wasn't quite right with the children or with us, we just had such an understanding that it wasn't really just about us. It's about so much more than that. And I think that because we focused on all of it and our relationship just organically developed and flourished that way, I felt that was so much better grounds to start a relationship on, other than the small talk, going to different places and, getting dressed up, drinking, all of that. It just wasn't, that wouldn't have been for me at all.
And it's not.
So,
yeah.
That's how I felt that it sort of really helped, really.
Sorry, Karl, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, it's, in that sense, it's not the authentic way, because as a single parent, a lot of the time, like, although I only have my kids every other weekend, I work during the week and then I have them every other weekend. So really I had one weekend free, and, it meant taking a couple of days off. And you have to have that compromise, because for some people, unfortunately, we look at it and go, oh, well, it should be like I dated before I was married or before I was in this relationship, before I had children. Well, that would be lovely, but it's just not the way it works. And actually working the children into that, and like we've both said, we were talking earlier about it, because it's good to review these things. We have regular conversations about these sorts of things, but is actually, it's not only the two of us, it's then the 4 children that we've got between us. It's then the 2 exes that we've got between us, and the family dynamics of how they work when they're with them, and the household rules there. There's 4 different households there and 4 different household rules with the kids. So actually when we're together, and then when all the kids are together, that's a 5th one, and we're going to have to work out how that all goes together. And it's a challenge. Of course it's a challenge. It's not going to go perfectly. I mean, don't get me wrong. That we've got a picture on the wall at Susannah's house here, and it's from the first weekend the kids spent together on an Easter holiday, which is 3 years ago now, just over 3 years ago. And the 4 of them are stood in the sea holding hands together, just bouncing up and down in waves. And bear in mind, like, our oldest girls were teenagers, or pretty much teenagers at that point. It was like, it's like, how is that possible? And it's like, well, because we're open, because we're honest about everything. We talked them through it before it even happened. We'd done online gaming and, played whether it was Monopoly or charades via Zoom and things like that for the months leading up to it. You don't have to initially meet the kids. Yes, you can form a relationship, and then yes, you can say, well, actually, yeah, you know what, Dad is dating somebody, and we'll meet online and we'll go through that process, and find what works for you, because as I say, every parent, every family dynamic is different, and as long as you have that open lines of communication and honesty, because we do have our vulnerabilities, we all do, whether single parent or not, we all have our own vulnerabilities, and working with those is so much better to a healthy relationship and blending families together.
What you said there, Karl, just about, there's lots of different moving parts, people to consider, exes, kids, you're living in different areas, and then it's the relationship as well. But isn't it so amazing to be able to be in a place where you can kind of navigate these things, all of these different moving parts together, and be vulnerable and be able to, both be coming from, I suppose, with your own, learned experiences, which I'm sure you both have learned a lot about yourselves and what you want and what you don't want in a relationship, and all of that. So yeah, I think for single parents, having a new relationship, especially, with another single parent and blending families, it's kind of amazing to be able to take all of these difficult, challenging life lessons and the personal growth that will have come from all of those challenging life lessons and have another chance. I think it's pretty cool.
And I remember that when, and before like all of the children kind of met, Karl, because where he runs, so he would do like a running video and then have a little record it and chat to my two children. And then I would send little recordings over to Karl for him to send to his children, just to ask questions about their interests, what they like, so that then when we did do like games night, we used to have games night on a Friday night, and then we'd have like games night together, and then the children were able to then choose which game they wanted, and then they would play. And then usually what would happen was me and Karl would just sit back and then just watch the four children just connect, argue, agree, disagree, laugh, shout, etc. And then we were like, I think this will work out okay when we meet together. And that was really beautiful to see. So the sort of the children helped that.
That's amazing. And how was it? Did you have to, did you give your exes the heads up about introducing the children, or any kind of tips for any of our listeners kind of navigating similar, is there any advice that you can share about all of that?
So is that with regards to kind of sharing it with the exes that you're in this new relationship? Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Sharing it with, giving the exes the heads up, or even how to explain to the kids that it's a new relationship, or did you say you were friends, or just kind of navigating that piece around introducing the kids?
You know what? I think because as we kind of mentioned already, like we went down the very honest with each other route, even if we're feeling a little bit iffy or a little bit doubtful about stuff, because we were honest, we went for the same approach with the kids, really. And obviously kids are very perceptive nowadays at the best of times. And, it's almost like they knew I was dating somebody beforehand because they saw that I was happier. And in doing that, it's then obviously when you get to the point of meeting up, yes, you have to let your exes know, and it's just a conversation. Like, you're separate from them for a reason. It didn't work out for whatever reason that might be. And yes, it's important to give them information, but also not necessarily give them too much information. I'm in a new relationship. We've done our due diligence. I'm a decent human, or I'm a good person and good parent. So I'm not going to throw my children straight into the deep end after 1 week of knowing somebody and get them to meet up. That's just not responsible. That's not the way to do it. It might work, but you'd be very lucky for it to work that way because you don't know the other person. So take your time, build it up, build everything up, be honest with your children about who this person is, what they do, what they like, what they don't like, what their children like, what they don't like. And as you say, what Susannah just said about us learning about each other's children, you know, as I say, whilst I was doing my running video, I was challenging Susannah's oldest one to a dance off, which I still think 3.5 years later we haven't done because I realised I can't dance and I'm going to get my butt
definitely
whooped.
Can't.
No, I definitely can't dance. but yeah, so yeah, just absolute honesty with it, because your children would appreciate it more if you know, whether they're 2 years old or whether they're, you know, as our oldest ones are now, like 16 pretty much years old, and we're going into a whole bunch of new challenges with regards to timings and schedules and colleges and meeting friends and everything else, and try to keep everybody in the same place. Just be honest and go, well, actually, you know what? We would like some family time this weekend. I understand you want to see your friends. I understand you've got to do things for your new college, or in my oldest daughter's case, the GCSEs. She was like, I need to miss the weekend. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? We'll come down. We'll come down to where you live and we'll see you for 3 or 4 hours. Then you go off to the library and we'll spend time, you know, in the other scenario with the others. So it's absolutely about adapting and working with the scenarios you've got, because that's, as families, there's so much.
And we also ask them what they would like to do, because I think it's really good for the children to assess their own boundaries. So it's a bit like with the older ones, they're like, I really don't want to go to the cinema with you anymore to watch these baby films. And we're like, oh yeah, but as a family. But then when you take on board what they're saying, it's like, would I have wanted to at 16? Absolutely not. So then we're like, okay, well then you don't have to, but you need to be there to have dinner with us or meet us after. Or so again, it's all the navigating, and we ask everyone's opinion. And sometimes we have little family meetings if things aren't going as we would like. But then we just give everybody the opportunity to say. And as the years have gone on, they're so much more confident in doing that. They're like, we can have a family chat, do you think? And we're like, yeah, should we have a family chat? And then me and Carl are summoned to the kitchen. So I think that because we set it that way, that kind of continues, and it's getting better and easier for all of them. So the boundaries in our household when we're all together is very different.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're creating this culture of honesty, of open communication, and of kind of compromise, you know, for, you know, taking everyone into consideration, which is amazing. But I just realized the time. We could sit here and chat for hours, and I would love that. But thank you both so much for everything. Thanks for being such amazing members of the Frolo community. Thanks for flying the Frolo flag. Thanks for sharing so openly, you know, your stories and about your lovely relationship. And I'm really, really happy for you both. So happy for you both. And yeah, excited to see where, you know, excited for what the future holds for you both as well.
Thanks for having us, Zoe.
And that's a wrap for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, then I have one small favour to ask. Please can you take a minute to subscribe to the Frolo podcast and give us a rating and review? This really helps other single parents who might benefit from it find us. The Frolo app, which is fully user verified for user safety, is available on the Google Play Store and the App Store, and you can find out more info and download links at www.frolo.com, or follow us on Instagram at FroloApp. And you can purchase your copy of our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent, at all the major book retailers. Until next time, have a great week.